So let's talk about comparison and transcending comparison, which is the most essential step on the spiritual journey. So, in the separation based paradigm, the duality based paradigm, which is axiomatic system 1 that we've discussed earlier, which is the belief in being a separate body mind identity or the ego, as opposed to the entire cosmos appearing as the apparent limited separate ego. So, that belief requires comparison in order to survive. If you remember in school, your so-called value was determined by how well you did at your academics, or whether you had some exceptional extracurricular talent. So the very idea of exceptional is inextricably linked to the idea of mediocre or average. And the world is centrally driven by competition, which is based at its core in comparison. It breeds phenomena such as elitism, separation, conflict, you versus I'm better than you, basically. But according to paradigm 2 or axiomatic system 2, which we've been discussing, which is that the absolute truth of pure consciousness alone is, and that the absolute truth of pure consciousness is perfect and appearing as the entirety of manifestation. Comparison is transcended because when that which is alone is revealed to be your true self, what is there to compare it with? There is nothing there to compare it with other than it. So it's due to it imposing duality upon itself, duality, separation and limitation upon itself, that the very idea of comparison arises. Comparison requires two, and comparison is typically a judgment of better and worse. This versus that, better versus worse, good versus bad. That which is one and indivisible cannot be compared with anything, because there is nothing else. And this is an enormous liberation from the burden of comparison, which keeps us stuck to suffering. If we perceive ourselves as better than the so-called other, then we are in a state of joy. And if we perceive ourselves as worse than the so-called other, we are in a state of depression, low self-esteem, and misery. But as we know all too well, forms are impermanent, unstable, and unreliable. One day they'll make you believe one thing, the next day they'll make you believe another thing. So better and worse is ambiguous at best. Individual human beings are like apples and oranges. You cannot compare them. Comparison is valid in a specific field of life. Like you can say that person A is better than person B at mathematics, but person B might be better than person A at the guitar. So is person A better than person B? Obviously, there is no such thing. There is no comparison possible. It's like apples and oranges. So the ego basically survives on comparison, on what it is better at than others, on what it is worse at than others, and constantly reasserting these distinctions and comparisons keeps it going. But pure consciousness, which is the source of the ego, and which is illimitable, indivisible, is beyond comparison. It is the only thing, therefore you cannot compare it with anything else. But if you see that you are this only reality, the comparison is transcended and the immense burden of the consequences of comparison is taken away.